Welcome to today's webinar. My name's Alex, and I'm on the customer service team here at Charity Digital, and I'll be your host today. So, warm welcome to everyone. Firstly, if this is your first webinar, just to introduce ourselves at Charity Digital, we're a UK registered charity, and our mission is to allow everybody to be more digital and help everybody access that and find the tools to do so. We do this by doing two main things, by publishing wonderful content like the webinar you're seeing today, along with articles and podcasts and loads of helpful how-to videos. And the other part of what we do is publishing loads of offers that are offered to us through our catalog to help charities access software at vastly reduced rates. So our session today is budgeting tips for charities on how to plan your financial year with the wonderful Andrew Faulkner from Accounts IQ. This session is going to cover a couple things, how charities can plan their financial processes and budgeting in order to stay efficient, compliant, and join the systems up with operations. Before I hand over to Andrew, just a couple of house rules. The session is being recorded and it will be available to watch on demand in about a week's time. The slides and other resources will also be able to view, so don't worry if you miss anything. Closed captions are available for today's session. To enable them, you can find them in the Zoom window. You just click the More button, and I think you can access that through the closed captions section. During the webinar, ask loads of questions. You can do this by accessing the chat menu. I can see some of you have done so already. And if you see a question that resonates with you, you can upvote it. This gives a little thumbs up to the question, and we do like to prioritize those questions. So do be sure to do so. And lastly, if you come across any issues, anything you can't hear, can't see, let us know in the chat. We'll do our best to fix it. Great, that's all from me, and I'll hand over to Andrew.
Great. Thank you, Alex. Just give me a nod there, someone, if make sure we can see the screen okay. We're all okay on that. I'd appreciate it. Excellent, excellent. Just kind of following on from what Alex said there before we get started. Yes, welcome any questions you might have. If you want to throw them in the channel. Alex and Angela, who is sitting behind the scenes, we're going to keep an eye on that for me and bring up the questions towards the end of the session, although I might answer some of them as we actually go through the session this morning as well, or this afternoon, apologies. I'm also going to ask Angela to run some polls in the background, and I'm going to get her to throw up the first poll now, which is kind of what finance system are you currently using, just to kind of get a feel for where everyone is currently in their finance process. Quick introduction to myself here this morning. My name is Andrew Faulkner. I'm the Senior Charity Lead at Accounts IQ. I've been working with charity clients for nearly 2.5 years now. And they tend to be kind of going through a kind of a larger, sometimes digital transformation project. It's a term that's kind of thrown around. It's a bit like the AI term that's thrown around nowadays. But it is more important in the charity world that kind of you have limited resources. You've got to use those funds that you have very carefully. You've got to control that. And it's obviously the reason for today's webinar as to how using systems, integrating your systems, getting the right level of detail, granularity in your reporting together helps you can kind of control those limited funds that you have, that you can put them to obviously that charitable use. I also sit on the product advisory group here at Accounts IQ. So I sit as part of the senior team that we're looking at kind of going, what does the market need next? What's the next big advancement coming? So obviously AI is a really kind of buzz term at the moment, and it's something we've already kicked off work internally on. We'll be releasing more product around that as we move through 2025. I've also been a senior implementation consultant. So I've seen the other side of the customer journey, not just the sales side, but actually bringing new clients on board. And that could be a scary time for new clients. It's kind of going, oh, I know I need to change my finance system, but I'm comfortable with it as well. I know where the problems are. I know where the workarounds are. But going through that, kind of trying to smooth the way for clients as they come on board. So, just quickly on today's agenda, I'm going to give you a very, very quick accounts IQ introduction. Obviously, we're here to talk about the broader terms of kind of your data and your budgeting and that. I'm going to talk about knowing your data. Where's all your data coming from? Can you trust it? Do you have a quick kind of view of where it is at any point? What can you automate within your current processes? Then we're starting to look at budgets, where to start, how to keep on top of them, and then using your budgets day to day. So it's kind of going, are you using them against your expenditure when you're doing approvals on purchase orders, purchase invoices? Are you tracking them against budgets at a good detailed level? And then reporting, how you bring all of that budget, all of that data together to give you what's known in the industry as that single source of truth. So, very quick introductions to Accounts IQ. Won't spend long on this. We are a cloud financial management system. We've been around since 2005, launching the product in 2008. Where we are very much UK and Ireland centric. We do have over 20,000 daily users on the platform, and we are present in over 60 global countries. We are very much a mid-market product. So we sit in that kind of space above kind of some of those what we would classify as micro platforms. So your Zeros, your QuickBooks, some of the smaller Sage systems, Sage 50, Sage Accounting One, etc. But we're not at the higher level with your NetSuite, your SAPs. We would also take a large cohort of clients coming off older legacy systems, and finance over the years, I found that finance systems, people don't really invest in them. Companies don't see value in them. So quite often we get clients who are on systems that they've been using for 7, 8, 9+ years. We also have smaller clients coming on board who are still using Excel, which beggars belief in this day and age. Just throwing up some logos, some of the clients, some of the kind of sectors within the NFP and charity world that we work with. It's probably accounts for about 18% of our overall business. We do a lot of work in the school sector, your traditional charities, and also your not-for-profit, so kind of member organizations, sports organizations, and the likes of that as well. So everything we do as a business and everything most modern finance platforms kind of aim to do is taking that old finance function. So it doesn't matter whether you're on an old legacy system or whether you're on a kind of a more micro system that doesn't have that kind of broad functionality that you can get from a true cloud platform, is that you spend a lot of time processing transactions. And when I talk to charity clients in particular, you find that they might have a CRM system. Okay, they have their finance system, they might have a CRM system, they might have a donor platforms or multiple donor platforms. And depending on the charitable goals and tasks that they're running, they might also have some project management platforms coming in there. And then quite often beyond that, you have other systems in place. So they might have separate purchase order systems, or it's been done through like shared Excel files or kind of bespoke platforms like that. You might also have staff expenses and volunteer expenses being captured through either other third-party expense platforms, or again, they're on shared documents that are coming in that have been emailed around the organization in terms of approval and that. So that you can spend an awful lot of time just trying to process information. You're always going to have that compliance and reporting piece. And I always feel a little bit sorry in some regard for the charity sector in that you have your standard company house kind of reporting, but you've also got your SORP reporting. You might be, so depending on the donations, the funding that's coming into your organization, you might be having to report out to those organizations as well in a timely manner. And it mightn't just be year end, it might be more frequently, it could be quarterly or even half yearly through the year. But ultimately, that leaves very little time for business decisions, very little time to kind of drill into the information, to allow finance to kind of get beyond the four walls of the finance function and kind of really start to help the other functions kind of go, look, how are you tracking? This is your data. Where are you at with budgets? Can we spend a little more, or do we need to rein it in a little bit where we look like we're about to overspend? And it's that data that can really, really change the direction of an organization and being able to kind of do more good with your money. So everything a modern finance system should be doing is trying to minimize that transactional processing. So all the automation you can get in there, really, really important. But more important nowadays is actually your ability to integrate with those third party systems. So if I'm using your CRM to create kind of a tag in a new donor, that should be created in your finance function straight away. When that donor donates money, and you might be collecting this through Stripe or PayPal or some other platform, it's kind of bringing that into play then as well, and kind of going, right, how do we connect this up? How do we automate it? The compliance reporting, it's always going to be there. It's never going to be changed. It's out of everyone's hands, unfortunately. But with the right tools and the right kind of tagging of transactions, it can make that a lot simpler. But ultimately, giving you the data to kind of go, right, now we can help the organization. So, as I said, good data in, tag it correctly, and then um, running your budgets alongside those data points. So you're reporting, etc., or you're kind of going, I'm looking for approval, but can I actually approve this transaction? Do I have the budget to approve it? Is really, really key. So there's kind of, as a company, we look at kind of three main pillars that sit behind that. The first one is efficiency. Kind of going, let's minimize the time needed to do manual tasks wherever we can. Collaboration, bringing internal and external stakeholders into the finance process. So internal being the finance team, okay, ultimately you have the final control over whether this goes into the books or not, when something is paid, etc. But the external stakeholders are those people who kind of go, they want to raise a purchase order, or they're the approvers of those purchase orders, purchase invoices. They're the ones that are kind of setting their budgets. You've given them last year's finances. They're kind of going, well, look, we're going to see, we're expecting 10% more income on this particular fund, or this particular donation channel, but our overheads, cost of labor force, cost of volunteers is going up, our IT spend's going up, so we can work on the budgets and we push it in. But it's bringing that data points together, and then you're into kind of the insights. So you've got all the information into the system quicker, you've got that external kind of collaboration happening, and then finance can provide the timely insights in a way that people outside the finance department can understand them. Finance traditionally loves a big spreadsheet, loads of rows and columns of data together, but sometimes actually putting that in a graph, putting it in a dashboard, and kind of showing it to a manager with a trend line will resonate more with them. Kind of going, look, here's your budget line, but you're above it, you're below it. We need to adjust, and they can see that and they can react quicker to it. So if you look at some of the charity stakeholders, and some or all of these might apply to the individual charities we have on the call today. So you've got your volunteers, your paid staff, your donors, your suppliers, your beneficiaries of your charitable goals, the local community maybe that you're operating in, your grant providers, and the regulators. That is a lot of moving pieces in a bigger moving wheel, as it's presented there. And it is a lot for the finance teams, who predominantly take an awful lot of the responsibility in managing and all of these data points, all of these stakeholders, to make sure the income, the transactions coming in are transacted, they're coded properly, but also then ultimately the reports that are going out to all of these. So whether they're the internal, external stakeholders, so your volunteers, your paid staff, your department managers, etc., going out to the more external, slightly external ones. They're still internal. So you might have a board, you might have your trustees that you're reporting to monthly, quarterly, etc. And then you have that regulator piece above that, as well as some obviously larger grant providers on that. So this is a term, some of you may be familiar with this, you may have seen this before, but VUCA, and it stands for basically volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. When you look at the environment that charities in particular are operating in, there is volatility, there is uncertainty, there is complexity and ambiguity. And you can all probably throw your own terms at this, but using the right finance system at the back of your charitable organization can really help kind of alleviate some of these points. So again, have the four of them there. Volatility, you should be looking to kind of go vision. So, do I have the right data? Am I reporting in a way that everyone in the charity can understand what's going on? These are our budgets. We're loading up our budgets. This is what we're expecting to come in. We might say 60% of it is kind of locked in at the start of the year, 40% is we're shaking the bucket, for want of a better way, at the local marathon event, or we're doing a fundraiser that we do every year, and we expect to bring in 20% of our charitable income that way. The uncertainty piece, again, is understanding the data. So, kind of going, we've set our budgets, this is our vision for what we're going to bring in. The uncertainty is we're going to understand how we're spending that, how we're tracking day by day, week by week, month by month. So it's not that we're setting a budget and, well, we're just going to go off and do our own thing. We're not going to adhere to it. The complexity comes in is bringing that clarity. So we're changing complexity into clarity. So again, you can see the data, and being able to see the data, like if you go back to the traditional kind of month end close in any organization, it might be 2, 3 weeks after the month end. So if a mistake was made in the first week of the month, it could be 7 weeks later before that's actually reported on. Whereas if you're actually building reports and dashboards, and the organization can see them every day, every week, every month, the clarity is much clearer. There's no surprises come the actual month end reporting. The month end reporting should be more kind of become to a degree a box ticking exercise for the board, for the trustees. But in terms of the team on the ground running the charity day to day, there should be clarity before you get to that point as to where you are. And then ambiguity, change that to agility. So it's kind of going, look, we can see the problem 1 week into the month. We're way down on what we were expecting. We're not going to hit our budget in terms of donations this month, or we're going to overspend on a particular event because there's been something that's happened in the planning of that wasn't careful. And you have that agility to change angle, change tack really, really quick, and kind of how do we move beyond this? So, knowing your data. So, I'm going to ask Angela just to throw up the second poll there. I ran this poll recently on another similar webinar I ran for the charity sector, and there was a surprising statistic came back out of it, in that there was only about 50% of the people on that webinar who said we can actually trust our data. So, when you look at the data points that everyone on the call is dealing with on a daily basis in the finance department, and some or all of these may apply. You might have other ones as well, but you might have information coming from your CRM, your donor platforms, obviously payroll and HR. As I said, you might have that full-time staff, but you might also have volunteers. They may not be on payroll. You might be just kind of using expenses for that. Some of the charities you're dealing very much in project management, and they could be multi-year projects as well. Your banks, are do you have visibility on them? Are you getting them connected into your system? In terms of your donor collections, etc. Are you connecting those systems, and kind of how can you get all that information together? I mentioned expense management, kind of going, how's that data being collected? Is it being approved? Is it being evidenced? So our volunteers or permanent staff kind of collecting, photographing receipts, etc. Your supplier invoices, are they coming in a timely manner? Is there an easy way to kind of match them off against approved purchase orders? And again, staff expenses and journals. So there's a couple of ways most data comes into your finance system. The obvious one being the direct entry into the platform, file uploads. So you might be still populating Excel files depending on the data. Sometimes that actually can still be quicker. You bank feeds, can you connect your bank accounts into your system and get that data flowing? And then looking at integrations. And this is a huge part of what we're seeing nowadays, is that more and more of the new clients that come to us as a company are looking to kind of go, right, how do we integrate this data? How do we get it flowing across so we're not having to double entry across number of systems? So looking at the data coding, and what I'm about to show here is the Accounts IQ coding structure, but other systems will have similar versions of this. So our chart of accounts is kind of, it's the compliance, the statutory piece. And in Accounts IQ, we have a 3-tier chart of accounts. So we have categories, subcategories, and your GL code. And that just allows you to get that kind of basic structure right. Quite a few charities might have a charitable entity, but you might also have a trading entity with a VAT or a partial VAT element available to it. And then being able to consolidate those results together. But very important that the chart of accounts are kind of aligned in that case as well. Then it comes down to kind of the performance of the charity. So how do you actually get down to that? And that really comes down to kind of your analysis structure. We call it business intelligence analysis, but just analysis. We have a number of departments. Some of those other platforms I mentioned at the start of the call might have one or two departments. When you get up to the ERP level, you can have unlimited um, departments within it. So you look at some of the ones that typically we say or see, sorry, location, region, activity, and then you can have additional, in our world, up to 6 dimensions. Now we do find that everyone gets a little bit excited at this stage, kind of going, oh, 6 departments, that's going to solve a load of problems. The truth of the matter is, when we actually analyze our entire database of clients, most of them are on, I think that the figure comes out at 3.4 departments is what they're actually using. And it's only very complex businesses like engineering businesses and that actually need those 4, 5, 6 dimensions. You find the vast majority, not all of them, but the vast majority of charities, 3 to 4 dimensions of analysis is more than enough to give you the level of detail that you need to run reports, run dashboards at a level that's really, really powerful for the organization. So looking at what can you automate, and I don't know if you're there, Angela, can you mind throwing up kind of the third poll there for me? Just talking about integrations there, and we'll come up to that shortly. So looking at the power of automation, again, this applies across most modern finance systems, but things like in the sales ledger. So connecting those donor systems, setting up recurring invoices. I was only talking to a charity this morning, and they have a funder who requires they sign up for a year, but they require a quarterly invoice, and set that up in the system, and the invoice just generates every 3 months for that particular donor. Sorry, I lost my mouse there for a second. Apologies. Things like setting up deferred income journals, really important in the charity world, that sometimes you might get that once a year large donation, £12,000, euros, whatever it happens to be, comes in, but you actually want to automate the spread of that within the system. And then being able to bulk send things like invoices, statements out. Staff expenses, utilizing mobile apps, mobile technology, kind of where's the digital approval of that? You've got visibility on spend and kind of go the proof of spend, which is obviously very important from an audit trail perspective. The purchase ledger is probably one of the biggest areas that when we talk to charities for the first time is where their concentration is. We need to control the spend. And we'll come to budgets very, very shortly now, but like being able to raise digital purchase orders, put them through a digital workflow so that people can either log into the system, they might be doing it through the email, they might be through a mobile app, that approval. But that approval is they can see what the budget is. So I've been asked to approve an invoice for £2,500, but you know what? My budget for the month's only 2,000. I can't actually approve this. Being able to get your invoices directly into a system, auto matching them against approved POs, and you might set things like tolerance rules around that auto matching. Then it comes to bulk paying your supplier. So can you bulk pay them? Can you rely on the system to say, look, you've 200 purchase invoices in the system, but on the parameters you've selected for this payment run, there's 25 invoices that are now due for payment. Do you want to part pay or fully pay all of them? And being able to kind of control all of that as well. And then being able to both remittances, etc. And again, back to the accruals piece. On the banking side of it, being able to connect up your bank accounts, really important, kind of streamlining that traffic light sorting through it. Banklet recs just no longer become a headache. They're just something that automatically happens. Journaling tools, really, really important. Kind of going, what can we automate as much as possible in the system? Drill down capability, and this goes down to the report. So if I'm looking at I don't know, an expenditure line, might be for a particular event or events that we're running. We've set a budget. The budget's £8,000 for a particular large event that we might be running next month. But I can see in October, as we are now, I've already spent 7,500 of that. We're kind of going, wow, that I wasn't expecting to quite get to that eight. We still have 5 days left in the month or whatever. Being able to kind of click that 7,500, drill into it, and see the transactions that are actually making that up. Really, really important, really insightful, quick way of doing it. Budget management, which we'll come to shortly. And then any charities that are operating in FX, being able to kind of control all of that. And then there obviously sometimes there is that VAT management piece and the charity world. A lot of charities aren't eligible for the VAT rules, or they might have partial VAT as well, and being able to kind of deal with that in a quick way. Intercompany, can you create intercompany sales purchase invoices, create intercompany journals, and then being able to consolidate all of that information. So one-click consolidation, being able to drill into that information again and again, any intercompany and FX reporting that needs to be done. Integrations. This is a big piece of the data puzzle for the charity sector. So where's your information coming from and how are you getting it into your finance? So there's always a number of ways of integrating data from different platforms. At a very simple level, you can automate kind of file transfers, okay? And that can be done. The file is emailed out of one system and it's automatically pulled into the other system. You can also put that through a mapping process. Then there's more advanced integrations where you're talking about technical terms called API connections. And basically what that means is you're creating a digital connection between two systems. So if I take my CRM system over here, I create a new donor profile. So Andrew wants to be set up as a donor for your charity, put in Andrew's name, address, contact number, email address. The system's automatically talking to your finance system over here. Does Andrew exist? No. Send the detail across, create that donor profile on your finance system. Now, if I raise a donor request or Andrew donates money, the information starts to flow, and you can even flow it backwards with an API to say, look, money's come in against Andrew's account, it's been allocated. That goes back then to the CRM system as an example, and that you might have it set up, a rule set up there that says, look, we'll now send a thank you letter to Andrew for that donation. And it keeps that information flowing. So your donor teams knows what's happening in the finance world, and the finance teams know what's happening in the donor side of the house. And then obviously sometimes clients need help with that work. You may not have the in-house expertise when it comes to kind of building integrations. So those third parties can get involved. You might have an outside consultant who might be involved, but we can also offer in-house capability in that. We have an in-house integrations team that love a good challenge. They love to roll up their sleeves and get involved. So just looking to the next poll there, I'm going to ask Angela to throw up is how often do you reforecast your budget? So we talked a lot about all of the data that you have coming into your system so far today. So where do you start with all of that data in terms of kind of going, we need to get our budgets together for 2025. So those of you on the call who run a kind of a calendar year, January to December financial year, you're probably, if you haven't started, you're probably about to start that budgeting process. And when you're starting that process, you're going to look backwards. You're going to look at kind of going, what is the activity for 2023? What were the actuals? Where are we at year to date for 2024? Where are we at in 2023 and 2024 against those budgets, those revised, reforecast budgets? How did we actually track? Is there any known changes that we're already aware of for 2025? So is there a particular large donation that's come in? It might be for, we're going to build I don't know, a youth center somewhere. So we know that's a large project where we've already got foresight on that. Are we expecting staff salary costs to go up? Are we expecting the rent on our premises to go up? So these are the questions that they're always asked around the organization come budgeting time. But having that prior year actuals and budgets and revised budgets at your fingertips, being able to pull the reports out of a system and kind of give them to those managers is a really, really good starting point for them. Then you start to kind of compile all that back together. And as I said, doing it at the granular level, kind of going, look, we have 10 charitable events, big events that we run every year. These are the budgets for those individual events. So I can get right down and kind of go, look, we've we're running the London Marathon is, forgive me, I can't remember what month of the year it is. So say it's April. But from January 25, we're going to start our fundraising drive. For that, it's going to peak towards the end of February through March. And as we get towards April, there'll be a last push, and then it'll fizzle out very, very quickly as we move into May. So you're going to build your budgets around that with obviously the prior knowledge that's in the wider team, but you can load them up into the system. So as your expenditure comes in, you might take out some radio advertising, some newspaper. You might have an ambassador that you're paying their expenses to go around the country to kind of talk about what you're going to be doing at the charity. You might have T-shirts for everyone who's running under your charitable umbrella, and bringing all of that together. You've been able to track it, kind of going, are we on budget, over budget? Get to the end of February, kind of going, do you know what? We're actually tracking ahead on terms of our income. Maybe we'll increase the budget spend for March into April. So being able to reforecast as you go through it and kind of going, you know what? We can actually bring in more. If we spend another 1,000, we could potentially bring in an extra 20,000 or whatever it needs to be. Or vice versa. It might be, you know what? We're not tracking as well as we thought. Do we push and spend more, or do we actually pull back a little bit? And that's obviously where the knowledge of the wider organization and the experience comes into the budgeting process. But obviously trying to bring all of that into the system is really, really important. And then when you kind of, how do you maintain that budget? So like I said, using those examples, you're always going to load up your original budget. So you're going to have an operational budget for 12 months. You're going to have budgets loaded up for individual events, times a year, etc. But it's reforecasting those budgets. It's really where the value is, and being able to kind of report against budget, against your reforecast budget, or maybe even being able to report back a year, kind of going, do you know what, this is where we're at the moment for that marathon event, but kind of go, let's look back 12 or 24 months and kind of let's look at that data in comparison and see, kind of going, are we actually on track here? Is there something happening? Is there a trend that we can spot within it? And then obviously every report, every dashboard you should run within an organization should include those budgets at all times. So you've got your budgets into the system, time to actually use them on a day-to-day basis. So things around kind of approval workflows is really, really important. And I've just taken some quick screenshots here from our own platform. But being able to kind of set up rules, set up different approval paths, depending on the supplier, depending on the analysis coding, the GL coding, individual items that you're looking to buy for the charity is really, really important. And being able to kind of sometimes multi-step that. So you might say it might be a particular department manager, particular budget holder approval at the first level, but then depending on the value of what's being bought or seeking to buy, you might have multi-step approval in that. And a good finance system will give you that flexibility. And if what it'll also do is it'll give you that kind of workflow to see exactly what happened, when it happened, was it approved, was it rejected, why it was rejected, went for approval again, and kind of being able to kind of go, the auditors come in and kind of go, well, hang on, your normal spend in a month is £10,000, but you can see in October 2024, you spent £112,000. What happened? Who approved this? And you can kind of go into your system and you can kind of go, well, look, it was approved at all these levels. And because it was a large value, it actually went all the way up. And we actually had one of our trustees outside of the main organization who actually approved it, as well as our CEO and CFO. So being able to kind of stand over that is really, really important in the charity sector. And then ultimately, I suppose, kind of bringing everything together. I'm just going to throw up the last poll here now. But where is that single source of truth? So where is your reporting? Have you got everything you need? That, as I said, you've got that month end reporting, absolutely, really rubber stamp it, box ticked, the end of the month, but it's tracking during the days and weeks within the month that where are we going? Just one of the ones from our own system we have up there, working capital. Do we have enough, or is it going in the right direction? But then looking at kind of what else can we do within the reporting? And it's kind of going, yes, we need all of this information. We need it in the right format for the right person at the right time. So, as I said, finance tend to love a good Excel sheet. Non-finance thinking managers in the organization love a good chart. But sometimes you might need to blend the two, or depending on the information or the story you're trying to tell. And that's something that's really important, is that kind of, what is the story? Are we tracking? Are we not tracking? Where are we going? Where do we think we're going? It's kind of going, how do we structure all of that to make sure everything comes together? So if you look at just how we structure things in Accounts IQ, we have that three-tier chart of accounts. So again, category, subcategory, and GL code. We have up to 6 dimensions of analysis, but as I said, we find the vast majority of our clients are 3.4 is the exact number. So they're somewhere between 3 and 4. Charities in particular definitely fall into that mix. I've always been aligned with the charity sector within Accounts IQ. As I said, I've done 2.5 years as a charity lead from a sales perspective. But back when I was in my implementation onboarding days, I also looked after charity clients coming in. Using your budgets and your reforecast budgets, kind of get right down to that granular level. How are we tracking for each event? But then rolling it all up together, kind of go, events in total, this is what we're expecting to bring in, this is what we're expecting to spend to bring in that money. And then using all the reporting tools that are in a finance system. So in AIQ, we have over 250 standard reports. On top of that, every screen in the entire system can be filtered and exported in a CSV format to Excel. You've got your dashboards, which you've seen some of on the screen there, so really important. And then you've got the ability to connect our system back into Excel or Power BI. So again, you can build your own reports, dashboards, etc., and work with that. And we also have a reporting services team. These slides, I think the plan is to send them out to you. So I'll just quickly flick through them. There's just 2 case studies there from our own world, but people experiencing that finance change. I think we're kind of at the end of my piece for today. So I'm going to bring Alex. Are you with us still? And do we have any questions?
Hey guys, yeah, thank you very much for that, Andrew. We do
No problem.
have a couple of questions.
Okay.
So Fran asks, um, can we make multiple budgets for restricted funds as well as general core expenses?
Absolutely. Really, really key in the charity sector. And something we have a lot of experience helping clients to kind of set up and organize the data structures so they can get those kind of what sort level, SOFA level reports out of the system in a real nice, easy way. But obviously using them day to day, really, really key. Keep everything on track.
Great. We also have another question. If you have a standalone project, it can only have its own mini budget, I think it's meant there.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can. Yeah. So again, because in our world, you can load up budgets at a very detailed level. You could set up an analysis code that would track that project, or there might be 2 or 3, 4 or 5 codes, depending on the nature of the project. But you can load up budgets against those smaller elements. They roll up into an overall budget for that particular project. But that can be separate from the rest of the budgets within the charity as well. So yeah, very, very easy to do.
Great.
But it all comes down to, sorry, Alex, it all comes down
No
to
worries.
structuring the data points in the right way.
Okay, great. That's all we have live, but we have had a couple of questions sent in before we began.
Oh,
One of
so,
those
so
was
someone being very organized and getting ahead of themselves.
they have, yeah, we've had quite a few of those.
Okay, go ahead.
So I'll ask one of those. How do I get my wider organization to pay more attention to our budgets? Is one.
Great question. Because it's all well and good finance having great intentions. Kind of going, yeah, we're going to get our budgets, we're going to load them into the system, we're going to report against them and that. And really, this comes down to probably a bit of an organizational shift as to how you talk about budgets in an organization. So what you find with organizations that haven't gone through kind of digital transformations and that is that we sit down this time of year, we do our budgets for 2025 from January to December, and we'll look at them maybe next June or July to check in how we are halfway through the year, and we won't see them again until we do our month year-end reporting in December 25. Going back to that point of kind of going, first of all, every report pack, every dashboard should show your budgets. Okay, so they're always there. They're always being talked about. The comparisons, the value and the percentage value up and down is always front and center in every conversation. But then kind of bringing them into your workflows as well. So if I'm use the example earlier on, if I'm raising a purchase order and I'm sending one to yourself, Alex, you're in charge of the IT team today. and I'm asking you to approve a purchase order for £5,000 because we need to buy a couple of new laptops. New staff have just joined the organization, and you go, hang on a minute, I can see against this budget, because I've been asked to approve 5,000, I can see I only have 4,000. So you could then go back to the person who raised the purchase order and kind of go, Andrew, sorry, we don't have the budget for that this month. I can buy three of them and we'll buy the other two next month. So it's kind of bringing them into the day to day conversation, putting it front and center that some people will buy into it really, really quickly. There will be people who will resist, but if the greater good, the more you put them in there, the sooner people will start to kind of talk about them and actually see the benefit in them as well.
Great, yeah. We have had another live question from
Yep.
Helen. Can you cope with charities that are also companies? She asks.
We can indeed, yes, yeah. We've good experience with that. So yeah, we can handle all of those complexities that come when you have actual companies in the mix, or it might be a separate company, or it might be kind of the charity and company, or all the one entity as well. So yeah, we can handle all of that. And again, data structures, setting up the chart of accounts, setting up the analysis coding to be able to break down those things. And then if it is a company, are you VAT liable or is it partial VAT liability? And we can handle all of that as well.
Great, great. We have had another question here.
Yep.
Can budget holders create their own dashboards?
At the moment, the dashboards are created by the finance team. Accounts IQ is a product. We have some very exciting new releases coming over the next 3 to 6 months. And in that will be the ability to build a kind of budget holder reports and dashboards within the product as well. So that's all they'll see when they log in.
Okay, great. We have a question in the main chat.
Yep.
Charles says, we are a small charity, and don't you think that Excel or Zero are still the best to use? I think that says because of limited funds and budget constraints.
I wouldn't disagree, Charles. Small charities really have very little money to go around. It's more of a balancing act for them than anyone else. I liken it to running my own household as well. Uh, my kids are always looking for more money, and I just can't earn enough on the other end of it. But yeah, no, there is absolutely there is huge benefits in going to an integrated system, but the timing has to be right and you have to see a value return for it. I absolutely. And Charles, if you my details are on the screen there, if you want to jump on a quick call and have a discussion about that, because sometimes I will say no to clients because I know it's the timing's not right for them. They're not ready to make that jump yet.
Great, yeah. We also have one more question here. Does it cope with VAT and partially exempt VAT?
It does indeed. System set up to handle both with very clear, detailed reporting around it, and obviously the full link in if it's a UK client, I presume, with MTD for HMRC as well.
Great, yeah. And lastly, we've got Deborah asking, similar to the last person's question or to a previous question, we need an even more, they looking for an even more basic level of help and what could be a starting point? Where should they start?
The starting point is look, reach out, jump on a call, let's have a discussion. There has been charities which again may be too small when you look at it on the surface, but kind of setting that path over kind of 12 or 24 months, kind of going, you know what, we will be ready at that point. And there's things you can start doing now to kind of get your organization ready for those changes. So it actually kind of smooths the way with it. But like we have quite cost efficient jumping off points as well for smaller organizations. But look, happy to take that offline and have a call at some stage or email me and we can chat it through.
Great, yeah. Thank you for that, and thank you everyone for your wonderful questions. That's all we have time for. Sorry, and most of all, thank you to Andrew for the wonderful session today. If you haven't already, please do make sure to sign up for the Digital Fundraising Summit, which is on Thursday, the 7th of November, and we will share a link in the chat for that for you. Thank you to everyone with thanks, and it's been really great. If you also do have any further feedback, please do feel free to share that with us. You can also put it in the chat, and you can reach us via email, and we also have a wonderful live chat service, and we'd love to hear from you guys. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Alex.
No worries.